Hi, boys and girls, and welcome back to our journey with Joseph. Over the past 2 weeks, we have learned so much about his life, and today we're going to hear a wee bit more. A caravan of camels, which is a real thing because I googled it, it just means a long line of camels, entered one of the cities in Egypt. And with them, the traders had lots of different things. They would have had gold and jewellery, they would have had wood and different things like that. But they also had one young slave. It was Joseph. And for the second time, Joseph was going to get sold. If you remember from last week, his brothers cruelly sold him to these traders. And now the traders had entered Egypt and they were now going to sell him to somebody else. I wonder who's going to buy him. It was this man. He is called Potiphar. And Potiphar was a very important man in Egypt. He worked for the Pharaoh. In fact, his title is Captain of the Guard. And Potiphar brought Joseph and he made him work very hard. Didn't take him long to give him plenty of work to do. I can't imagine it would have been very exciting, and I can't imagine it would be very glamorous either. And because he was the new slave on the scene, he would have got all the really, really bad jobs that the other slaves just did not want to do. I wonder, did he roll his eyes? Phil tells me I roll my eyes a lot. I've just done it again. I wonder, did he grumble and moan and complain? No, he didn't. Wow. I think that is truly astonishing, because if it was me, I would have done all of that. And I would have felt that I was justified to do that because of where I was. But Joseph didn't do anything like that. In fact, quite the opposite. Joseph worked hard. No matter what task was given to him, whether it was something really, 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 really bad, he did it heartily. And that means he did it to the best of his ability. Even if it was something really smelly. He didn't moan or complain. He didn't make fun of anything. He just went on and did it. And do you know why? Because God was helping him. Remember that we learned that Joseph knew God in that special way, and God was changing him every day. He was still doing that. And this is evident because you can see in his attitude that no matter what he did and what he was given to do, he did it well. Wouldn't it be lovely to be known as a person who does things well? I would love to be known as a person who, no matter what is given to them, I do it to the best of my ability. I wonder, are you a young person who, when a teacher gives you work, knows that person's going to do it really well? Because they always do that. That's a credit to you if you're like that. And I would encourage all of you that no matter what job you may be given, that you do it to the best of your ability. God helps his children live for him wherever they are. You know, I'm going to read to you from the Bible, and it tells us this. Because Joseph was working so hard, Potiphar noticed it. It says in Genesis chapter 39 and verse 3, and his master, this is Potiphar they're talking about, saw that the Lord was with him, that's Joseph, and that the Lord made all that he did to prosper in his hand. Do you know what? God hasn't changed since all those years ago. He is still with his children today. If you know the Lord Jesus in that special way, and you've turned from your sin and put your trust in him, then the Lord Jesus will help you no matter where you are. Look at Joseph. He's been sold in the land of Egypt, a place where he's not from and he doesn't know anyone. And yet we see that God was helping him. God will do the same for you, young person, no matter where you are. No matter if you're at home, no matter if you're at school or anywhere else. If you know him in that special way, then he's always with you. And when you ask him to help you, he'll always do it. why don't you test God? Why don't you ask him to help you for whatever? And just see how he maybe changes your attitude and he helps you to do things to the best of your ability. God will not fail you, young people. And we're going to see in our lessons that he certainly wasn't going to fail Joseph either. Because Joseph pleased Potiphar so much, Potiphar then decided to promote him. Imagine being promoted as a slave. Instead of doing all the awful jobs, he was actually promoted in charge of all of Potiphar's work team. He was now in charge of them all. Why? Because he'd done such a good job, and Potiphar recognised that. He's seen that he was different. He's seen that no matter what was given, he did it really well. That meant that he had to work in his house at times, and he was in charge over all the men that would have worked for Potiphar. Wow, isn't that a lovely testimony to have? Do you know what, boys and girls? There's a verse in the Bible which I love, and it says, God will honour those who honour him. And that is so true. If you put God number one in your life, in everything, God will make sure that everything will fall into place at the right time and in the right way. And boys and girls, I would encourage you to do just that. Trust him and ask him for help. And then just watch what happens in your life, because God will be with you. Do you know, there's something I haven't told you about Joseph, and this is mentioned in the Bible. Joseph was a handsome man. He was pleasing on the eye, and somebody else noticed this, but this wasn't a good thing, because the person to notice this was in fact Potiphar's wife. Now, we don't know her name, but what we do know is that she was an evil lady because she was very sinful. And Potiphar's wife noticed Joseph in the house. He's there a lot more now, he's in charge. And she liked what she saw. But she was sinful, and she wanted more, and she should have known better. She was married to Potiphar. He was her husband, and yet the Bible tells us that she wanted more attention from Joseph. Completely wrong. And Joseph knew this too, because she told Joseph all that she thought, and he said, no, your husband trusts me and I work for him. But this didn't stop her. She pestered him. She was persistent. And there was one time when Joseph had to go to the house on his own, and she was there, and she took that opportunity. And the Bible tells us that she came to him, and she took off his robe that he was wearing. And you know what? Joseph did something very wise here. He ran. He ran away as quickly and as fast as he could. He left that situation and got out of there. Now, there's times whenever we would say, don't run from things, face up to things. But see, in this instance, Joseph was right to run, because this woman was sinful, and Joseph knew that he could never be involved in sin, and he always wanted to put God number one and do the right thing. And the right thing for him here was to run. There's times whenever things may come up on the TV that you know are not for your young eyes, and you have an opportunity there. Run, in a sense, turn it over, or leave the room. There's times when you'll maybe hear things that aren't for your young ears, and quite frankly aren't for my ears either. What do? We leave. Why? Because God wants us to live a life that is pure and is right, and he will help us to do just that. Do you know, boys and girls, no matter where you go or what may happen to you, remember that God will help you to live in a right way. It doesn't matter where you are. Joseph had come from his hometown. He was now quite high up in Potiphar's house, but things were going to turn nasty, and they were going to turn very quickly. You see, whenever he ran, do you think Potiphar's wife would have been happy with this? Of course not. I can imagine her being really, really angry. How dare he ignore me? He is a slave in my house. There's no way I'm going to let him away with that. So, because she was so sinful and wicked and proud, she turned the whole situation around. She still had his cloak, and she started to scream really loudly. We were there then at that time, came running in to see was she okay, and she told awful lies about Joseph to make it look as if Joseph was the one in the wrong and he had left his cloak behind. Was that true? Of course not. It was all false. Joseph had left because he knew it was wrong, and now she had turned the situation around. Well, can you imagine Potiphar's reaction when he heard? The problem is he believed his wife and the lies that she told. This is not a good situation. How on earth is Joseph going to get out of this? He didn't do anything wrong. You know, the Bible tells us that Potiphar was so angry with Joseph that he put him into prison. No. So Joseph had been sold into Egypt. He worked hard as a slave. He was then promoted and still worked hard. He then ran when things got really bad, and he did the right thing. And yet here he is being punished again. And he's now in a dark, damp, smelly prison. Prison in those days would have been an awful place to be, and a truly horrendous situation to be in. I wonder in the prison, is he going to lie there and sulk and feel sorry for himself the way that most of us would have? No, he didn't. And once again, we see the character of Joseph coming through. We see that God is still with him, even though he's now in the worst possible place that he ever imagined to be. God is still there. Do you know why? Because the Bible tells us that even in that prison, he served people. He helped people. And the prison guard noticed him again. Do you notice, boys and girls, how when you do the right thing, people notice you? Do the right thing. People will notice it. Joseph proves that in our story, not just once, but here's another time. Because the guard noticed him. And the guard actually gave Joseph a job to do while he was inside the prison. And he served the other prisoners. And he talked with them, and he chatted with them, and he was just kind with them. Because that's what God does in your life. No matter where you are, he will give you the right attitude. And that's a lovely quality to have, young people, is the right attitude. And how I pray all the time for the right attitude. Wonder would you do the same? Because whenever we ask for help, God will help us. Here's Joseph in this prison. Oh, awful. But it's not going to end there. He started to talk to the prisoners. And one day, 2 more prisoners came in. And he realised who they were. One of them was the chief baker. So this person would have worked for the king of Egypt, which was Pharaoh. And Pharaoh had many people cooking for him. But one of these people would have been the chief baker. And he would have made sure that everything that was given to him was just right. And the other person was known as the chief butler. And the butler would have been the person who gave Pharaoh whatever he wanted to drink. He would have offered it to him and gave it to him. But here, these 2 men are in prison. Now, the Bible doesn't tell us why they were in prison, but they are here. And one day, Joseph noticed that they were very sad. And he said to them, "What is wrong?" And they said, "We have had 2 very strange dreams, and we simply cannot understand what they mean." Now, wait a wee minute. Dreams? Are we remembering what happened in the first lesson and even in the second one? Remember Joseph had his dreams? Now, in those days, when people had dreams, they would have went to magicians to try and get the answers to these dreams. And these men were saying, "There's no magician here, and I don't know what my dream means, and what are we going to do, and I'm quite worried about it." And Joseph said to them, "Is God not the person who interprets the dreams? Tell me what your dream was." And we have 2 very different dreams. And I'm going to read to you what they said. The first dream was this. This was the dream for the butler. Okay, so the person who gave the drink to the Pharaoh. And this is what he said. In my dream, I saw a vine with 3 branches. I saw buds, then quickly the buds became blossoms, and as quickly the blossoms became the bunches of grapes. I had Pharaoh's cup in my hand, and I took the grapes and I squeezed the juice into the cup and I gave it to him. That was his dream. Immediately Joseph understood, because God gave him the meaning. And this is what Joseph said back to the butler. He said, the branches are 3 days, and within 3 days you will be out of jail and you will be back in Pharaoh's palace serving him wine just as before. And then Joseph said this to him. Will you think about me whenever you go back to the palace? Will you remember me? And maybe the Pharaoh could show me kindness and get me out of this place. In fact, Joseph actually used the word dungeon. Get me out of this dungeon. Joseph saw hope. Finally, I have an opportunity to try and get out of this place and to be set free. You see, Pharaoh, being the king of Egypt, was much more powerful than Potiphar, the person who put him in jail. Next, it was the baker's turn to be told the meaning of his dream. Are you listening to this one? The baker went to say this. I had 3 white baskets on my head. On the top of it, the basket was filled with all kinds of good baked foods for Pharaoh. While they were on my head, the birds came and they ate those baked things. Such strange dreams, isn't it? Again, Joseph understood the dream, because why? God was the one to tell him what the meaning was. This is what he said. He said the 3 baskets are 3 days, and within 3 days Pharaoh will punish you by death, and your body will be left for the birds. Yikes. Maybe you're thinking, why did Joseph even tell him that then? But let's remember, Joseph didn't make the dream say that. And it was God that gave him the meaning. And even though it wasn't a nice thing to have to tell somebody, he had to do it. Joseph told the truth, even when it wasn't nice to hear. And young person, God will help you tell the truth if you know him in that special way. And even if everyone else around you is lying, God will help you to see that by always telling the truth is the right thing to do. You will never be in a situation where God cannot help you. Do you get that, young people? So when you trust in him and you've asked him to take away the wrong things in your life, he's always there with you. And you'll never be in a situation where he cannot help you. I love that. Do you know, I like to think of myself as just a wee bit older than you. But I need God's help every day. And I ask him every day to help me. And boys and girls, it's really good to get into that practice, even every morning. Lord, help me this brand new day. Help me to do the right thing. Tell the truth. Give it my all, no matter where I am or what happens. Joseph's messages came true. So can you remember the first one? Can you remember what was going to happen with the butler? I have to get these right. The next 3 days, Pharaoh had birthday. And who do we see here? We see the butler handing Pharaoh whatever he wanted to drink. Isn't that what Joseph had said was going to happen? Yeah. And then the poor baker. He was put to death by Pharaoh. It happened just the way as Joseph said, because God told him the real meaning. But here's the sad thing. Here's the butler, and he's given the drink to Pharaoh. Do you remember what Joseph asked him to do? He asked him to remember him, and he was hoping that Pharaoh would then be able to get him out of prison. But the Bible tells us a really sad sentence. The butler forgot about Joseph. And Joseph waited, and he waited, and he waited. And did anybody come for him? No. He's bound to sulk now. He's bound to get that pout on his face now. But he doesn't. And even though things don't happen the way he wanted them to, he still trusts God and he still works the best that he can. But then, oh no, wait, that's next week's lesson. You're going to have to come back and see what happens.
Girls, we're going to have our quiz now, okay? So, we're going to let the girls go first, as per usual. Are you ready? How did it happen that Joseph was working for Potiphar in the land of Egypt? How did it happen that Joseph was working for Potiphar in the land of Egypt? You think you've got it? He was sold as a slave. He was sold as a slave. Okay, boys, your question. Why was Potiphar pleased with Joseph's work? Why was Potiphar pleased with Joseph's work? Because Joseph did his work well and without complaining. Good way to be. Girls, how do you know that Potiphar was pleased with him? Potiphar promoted Joseph until he was in charge. Boys, question. Why did Joseph end up in prison? Think you know? That's right, boys. Potiphar's wife lied about Joseph. Girls, your last question. You ready? One day Potiphar introduced Joseph to two new prisoners. Who were they? Can you remember? Maybe if I rub my stomach, would that help? Give you a clue. Potiphar's chief baker and chief butler. Okay, last question for the boys. Why was it hard to be honest with the baker? Why was it hard, boys, to be honest to the baker? Why did Joseph find this difficult? Because Joseph had to tell the baker that he would die 3 days later. Bye for now, boys and girls. See you next week.